We're going to need additional funding.
That's exactly what I just asked about. And you said it was
No.
misinformation. Yes.
What you're asking me is why Congress needs to come back and do their job. That's what you're asking me. Congress needs to come back and do their job and provide extra assistance, extra funding to disaster relief fund. That's what Congress needs to do, and we're going to continue to urge that. You may not want that, but that's okay. That's what this president wants, and that's what the vice president wants. Thanks, everybody.
All right, yesterday, Karine Jean-Pierre at her press briefing dressed up like a petulant 12-year-old child who got into her dad's closet and grabbed a sport coat to take to work. What the hell is going on here? Or she's doing like an amateur production of Guys and Dolls. She's playing Harry the Horse, and they haven't altered the costume yet. If you see a gal making dives in the sky. I just screwed up the lyrics. I never screw up the lyrics to show tunes. You can bet that he's doing it for some doll. Yeah, that's weird. That is really weird. Here's why when you have a job like the press secretary of the White House, you don't dress in anything weird or avant-garde. You know, you're going out to dinner, you're going to a club or some sort of evening affair, and you want to look a little fun and a little edgy. I don't begrudge her having a fun style. But when you're a professional and you do a professional job, you don't dress like this. Why don't you dress like this? Because it's possible that what you say on camera is going to be so important that it's going to be plastered all around the world. And you represent the people of the United States and the White House and the Biden administration. And so now, as she says something important on behalf of all of us to the entire world, we look like idiots. She looks like an idiot. What the hell is she doing? All right. Fashion critique aside, she had an exchange with Peter Doocy at the White House that revolved around the narrative that FEMA does not have enough money for hurricane relief. Now, that is a fact. The Secretary of Homeland Security, Alejandro Mayorkas, has gone on the record saying we do not have enough money budgeted for storm relief to get us through hurricane season. All right, that is a fact. Also a fact, FEMA has committed close to $1 billion for illegal immigrant, migrant relocation programs and sheltering programs. That is a fact. It is also a fact that this weekend, the Biden administration announced $150 million of relief for people in Lebanon because of the incursion from the Israeli government to go after Hezbollah. It's also a fact that the Biden administration put out a video featuring Samantha Powers, the director of U.S. aid, bragging about how billions of dollars in U.S. aid have been able to keep the lights on in Ukraine by installing new major power systems and electric grids over there, while the people of North Carolina and Georgia and Tennessee continue to go without power here at home. Now, all of those are facts. And Peter Doocy's question was very simple. When you say you don't have enough money for the hurricane relief victims here, but you've spent all this money on these other things, doesn't it call into question the priorities of this administration, putting other things, other people, other countries first before the American people? It's a pretty simple question, a question based on fact, all of the facts that I just laid out for you. Here's the exchange.
And on this issue of funding, the administration has money to send to Lebanon without Congress coming back. But Congress does have to come back to approve money to send to people in North Carolina. Do I have that right?
Here's what I'm going to be very clear about. The president and the vice president has had a robust whole of government response to this. Hundreds of millions of dollars. I said it at the top, more than $200 million that we have directly put towards survivors here for disaster help. And that's because of this president's commitment to make sure that we are there for communities that are impacted. We take this very seriously again. We take this very seriously. And
all right, so real fast, her answer here is we've spent $200 million on disaster relief, which is a fine answer to a question that wasn't asked. The question was not how much have you spent. The question is, you say you're out of money now, and you're saying Congress needs to come in and appropriate more money, and yet you keep finding money for other things. You've got all this money. So the question is not what have you spent. The question is, you're out of money to spend, and yet you keep spending money on Lebanon or on Ukraine or on illegal immigrants who are crossing the border. So isn't that a question of your priorities? So I'm going to let her continue with her spin here, but understand that her response is completely disjointed from the actual question. Because that's important, because she's about to accuse this reporter, Peter Doocy of Fox News, of spreading misinformation because he asked a question that is full of facts, the facts I've just laid out for you. But asking the question is dangerous misinformation.
Before the hurricane hit, we pre-positioned more than 1,500 federal folks on the ground to help. And so we have made sure that every state has gotten their storm requested emergency declaration. They requested it, and we made sure they received it. We've taken this very seriously. More than $200 million that we have provided to the impacted areas. But instead, people want to do disinformation, misinformation, which is dangerous, because then when folks on the ground hear that, they may not want to ask for the help that they need. That is there for them. That's our focus here.
But President Biden is fond of saying, show me your budget and I will tell you what you value. If he's got money for people in Lebanon right now, without Congress having to come back, what does it say about his values? There's not enough money right now for
His
people
values,
in North Carolina who need it. That's not misinformation.
Wait, no, that is your whole premise of the question is misinformation, sir. What you
Excuse
do?
me?
Yes,
Which
it's
part?
misinformation.
Is there money to send to Lebanon right now?
I just mentioned to you that we provided more than $200 million to folks who are impacted in the area, and I just shared with you that people are deciding not to. People are deciding not to. Not wait.
To Congress that there's not enough money to help people.
We're
in North
talking
Carolina
about the SBA disaster loan.
That's
yes.
money for people in North Carolina,
and that's important. And people in North Carolina need that. Wait, this is nothing new, Peter. This is nothing new. Congress comes together. They provide money, millions of dollars, for disaster relief. We're asking them to do the job that they have been doing for some time.
From a letter that President Biden
doing
sent to
for
Johnson,
some
McConnell,
time.
Schumer, and Jeffries. The president's letter is not misinformation. Would you agree?
No, the way you're asking me the question is misinformation. There is money.
The way you're asking the question is misinformation. These people hate free speech. They hate the First Amendment. They hate freedom of the press. These people are absolute authoritarians. The way you're asking the question is misinformation. Again, I want to reiterate the facts. You're asking Congress to come here to allocate more money. You claim you're out of money for programs for hurricane relief. You have plenty of money for that. You know, it's amazing to me that by laying out the facts that they're stating themselves, but then by adding one more aspect to the facts, because all of the facts are indisputable, and then you tag those facts with one question. What does this say about the president's priorities? That you've got all this money budgeted for these other things, but you don't have enough money for the Americans who are struggling from the hurricane. And that is now misinformation. Why is it misinformation? Because it's hard. It's hard to answer that question because the question points out a reality. The question points out the reality that they have put other people and other nations first. And that's dangerous, apparently. That's dangerous. You're putting people in danger by asking that question. They hate free speech. They abhor it. They don't want the one person in the room to ask them challenging questions to be there and exist. They don't want that one channel to exist on your satellite or cable box. They don't want us to be able to do what we're doing. And if they get power, if they get more power, I assure you, we will be gone from this platform. They will make sure of it. They're telling you right now that that's what they would do. It's absolutely atrocious, this response. And it tells you exactly who they are. A little bit more here as this exchange finishes up here, because she's about to storm out in a huff.
That we are allocating to the impacted areas, and there's money there to help people who truly need it. There are survivors who need the funding, and it's there.
That you don't like misinformation.
I actually said we have the money available to help survivors of Hurricane Helene and also Hurricane Milton. Now, there's going to be a shortfall, right? Because we don't know how bad Hurricane Milton is going to be. And so we're going to need additional funding. We're going to need additional funding.
That's exactly what I just asked about. And you said it was
No.
misinformation.
What
Yes.
you're asking me is why Congress needs to come back and do their job. That's what you're asking me. Congress needs to come back and do their job and provide extra assistance, extra funding to disaster relief fund. That's what Congress needs to do. And we're going to continue to urge that. You may not want that, but that's okay. That's what this president wants. And that's what the vice president wants. Thanks, everybody.
All right. So a couple of things here that need to be addressed quickly, and I'll try to plow through it. Peter Doocy is great. And so this isn't a criticism of him. It's a criticism of everybody else in the room who said, you know what, I've got to follow up on what Peter was asking, because here's what they should be asking. Hey, Congress never allocated one thin dime to pay off people's student loans. But somehow this administration figured out a way to circumvent Congress and even circumvent the Supreme Court and pay off people's student loans. Where'd that money come from? In fact, Biden brags about it all the time. Yeah, Supreme Court said I couldn't do it. Congress didn't do it, but we did it. Now, if you can figure out a way to find the money to pay off people's student loans, shouldn't you be able to figure out a way to help people who are in the middle of hurricane relief? What do you think her answer to that question would be? Let me cut through all of the bullshit on all of this and explain exactly what this is about. Because you saw the final, as I'm storming out the room, I'm going to make sure you get this talking point. Congress needs to get back here and do their job. Congress needs to get back here and do their job. The question you're asking really is, why does Congress need to get back here and do their job? Why does she keep saying that? Well, where are members of Congress right now? Where are members of the Senate right now? Where are they? They're back home. What are they doing? They're campaigning. They're running for office. And they're doing very, very well. You see, she wants Congress to come back and do their job because they want them off the campaign trail. And they're giving opponents to Republicans who are currently in office, they're giving those Democrats who are running for Congress and running for Senate a talking point. While your congressman is here campaigning and trying to get your vote and doing a fundraiser, he should be back in Washington, D.C., voting on emergency relief for Hurricane Helene. This is all pure politics. They know that they're losing. They know they're losing the White House. They know they're losing seats in the House, and they know they're losing their majority in the Senate. And so they're desperate, and they're trying to do whatever they can to blame Congress now for this supposed shortfall, which doesn't exist. The money in the budget is so fungible. They do this all the time. I just gave you a perfect example, the student loan repayment thing that Congress never voted on, right? They do this all the time. They find money, but they won't find money here because they want a talking point for politics, because they're desperate to get Congress back in Washington so they can't campaign, because they are losing and we are winning. Another thing that's very dangerous about this undermining of the First Amendment, the idea that the way you ask a question is misinformation. Did you notice the energy there? It's a very similar energy to this. Now, this is a sharper outfit, I suppose, although I still think it's unprofessional to show your bare shoulders in a professional setting. But it was summertime. It was June. You may remember this. In June, Joe Biden had just gotten back from the D-Day observances in Normandy, where he was caught looking like he was crapping his pants, and then he had to leave quickly. He was also found wandering aimlessly in the fields to go after a paratrooper. And then a few days later, he was at a fundraiser out in Los Angeles with George Clooney and Barack Obama, where he looked completely lost. He was frozen, and he had to be escorted off the stage. You remember, it was just 2 weeks before the debate that ended his political chances of running for a second term. 2 weeks after this clip, Joe Biden was exposed as the mental and physical handicap that he is. But at the time, Karine Jean-Pierre's job was to push back on all of those videos that we all saw with our own eyes. And what did she say?
The administration strongly criticized the media for clips showing the president appearing to be confused. freezing at times, and you called it cheap fakes, misinformation, disinformation. In one case, even implied that it was the product of artificial intelligence, calling it deep fakes. Do you have any regret over using that language?
Not at all. Not at all. And let me be clear, it was a certain part of the media. And I mean, you can speak to this better than I can, a certain part of the media which was doing this. And look, independent mainstream fact checkers in the press and misinformation experts have been calling out cheap fakes. And at the end of the day, they're fakes.
There you go. Cheap fakes and misinformation. You see the same energy that she used back then to call what was an obvious truth and fact. And again, just 2 weeks after this, it was not only the truth and fact, but Nancy Pelosi herself, George Clooney himself, Barack Obama himself were calling for Joe Biden to get out of the way because they were going to lose because he was obviously so debilitated. But back then, it was misinformation, disinformation, cheap fakes. Today, the way you ask a question is misinformation, disinformation. The truth is misinformation. This is why the First Amendment is so valuable. This is why pushing back on this crap is so important, because they all want to control the narrative. They all want to control the media. Hillary Clinton on a daily basis now is going on television saying that they've got to get a handle on misinformation and disinformation. Look what they define as misinformation. The way you ask a factual question is misinformation. Showing a video of Joe Biden and expressing alarm at what you see in that video is a cheap fake disinformation. They're authoritarians, and they want you to shut up. They want you to close your eyes. They want you to close your mouth. They don't want you to see or hear anything or say anything. They just want you to roll over like the little sheep they think you are so that they can do whatever they want with your money and take all of your rights and all of your power away from you. And it's even worse. Kenneth Vogel, New York Times, with Christopher Steele. Who's Christopher Steele? He's the guy who wrote the Russian dossier. You know, actual legitimate disinformation, like really disinformation. It was Oppo research created by this guy, Chris Steele, a former MI6 agent, who Hillary Clinton paid millions of dollars to through different puppet organizations to get dirt, well, to create dirt on Donald Trump. I'm shocked that Kenneth Vogel actually describes him as author of the debunked dossier, because there's still people at the New York Times that think that the Russian dossier was legitimate. Christopher Steele, author of the debunked dossier, is warning of disinformation campaigns and urging the U.S. to do more to counter them. That's pretty rich. Think about that sentence for a second. Author of the debunked dossier is warning of disinformation campaigns. He's freaking ground zero of disinformation campaigns. If you go to Wikipedia and search disinformation campaigns, it should give you a picture of Christopher Steele. He also says that despite the controversy, his business is thriving thanks to clients in banking, insurance, and pharma. I have no doubt. But look at this little gem from the article. Context is all important. When people talk about disinformation, it's a bit of a misnomer. A lot of disinformation is true and factual, but it's slanted, or it leaves things out or emphasizes some things at the expense of others. In other words, truth and fact utilized to express your perspective or opinion on world events is disinformation. If your opinion on world events runs contrary to what Christopher Steele, Karine Jean-Pierre, Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, Kamala Harris, and the deep state wish you to think, if you have a different opinion that is supported by facts, it's actually disinformation and you need to be silenced. Guys, it's happening right before your very eyes. I hope you see it. I hope your eyes are wide open. This election couldn't be more critical.